Welcome to Black Belt Leader. I'm Karen Gately, founder of Corporate Dojo. So why did we call the show Black Belt Leader? As a martial arts sensei, what I know to be true is that winning any battle or achieving any ambitious goal, whether that be at work or in life, takes not only skill, but also strength of character, mindset, strong spirit. So we're going to be drawing on lessons from the martial arts. We'll share insights into how you can become the best possible version of yourself and in turn inspire other people to follow your lead. So our goal is to inspire and enable you to become an influential, impactful leader of people. So at the end of the day, our goal is to help you to get the best from every single person that you lead. So each episode will be focused on providing you with a practical advice to achieve people leadership objectives or solve some of those common people challenges. So, if there are topics you would like us to explore, please get in touch. You can obviously do that through our social media channels. So to kick things off, there's no better place to start than a show dedicated to customers. The reality is, regardless of the type of business or industry we're in, the strength of relationships we have with our customers is fundamental to the results we're able to achieve, both obviously today and over time. So joining us to explore how leaders can optimise customer experience through their people are two leading experts in the field. First, we're going to be joined by Daryl Hardage, CEO of Seguity and author of The Client Revolution, Smashing the Loyalty Myth and Having the Edge, as well as bestseller, The 10 Commandments of Client Appreciation. And then later in the show, we'll be joined by John Yeo, who's the head of TEDx in Melbourne and Bright Star Consulting. And John's going to be here to share his insights to the role people play in creating great customer experiences, not just ordinary ones. So to kick off, I'd like to welcome Daryl. Daryl Hardage and his team at Seguity have managed the research of over 750,000 customers from hundreds of companies and identified through that work the critical drivers in what creates a number one company and most importantly a number one team. So Daryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karen. Great to be with you.
Yeah, look, to help us to get started to understand what your team does. Help us understand what number one companies, as you refer to them as, are actually doing right to win the loyalty of their customers.
Look, it starts, as you've said, it starts with leadership.
Yeah.
And it's important that when companies look at going to market, they focus on how do they ensure they have their team engaged so they deliver that optimal experience.
Yeah.
And most companies just focus on what's outside. They don't focus on what's inside.
Yeah.
So the best of the best, they really look at how do we make sure we can predict that our team know exactly how to take care of our customers.
Yeah. So when we say they're a number one company, what are some of the standout examples of, why do their customers love them? Why are they as deeply loyal as they are?
I think if you look at any experienced and mature company, they will tell you how they've got clients that have been with them for 10, 15, 20 years. And loyalty, we define loyalty as not just you coming back, but it's what we call unshakable loyalty. And unshakable loyalty means that if someone else knocks on the door with a cheaper price or a cheaper offer, they're not going to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So this is the result of many, many years and of course lots of touch points with many people across your organisation to achieve that unshakable loyalty. The only way we believe you can achieve that is having that right from the leadership all the way through the culture so that everybody understands exactly what 10 out of 10 looks like.
Yeah.
Exactly what their responsibilities are in every single interaction with every customer.
So you talk about the need to really understand both the head and the heart drivers of the optimum customer experience process.
Yes.
Help us understand what those are.
Well, look, head drivers are things that are the stuff. It's the stock, it's delivery, it's logistics, it's software, it may be your car parking, it's having the basic knowledge, it's having the ease of the simple things of doing business with you. And a lot of companies, they work on the process of achieving high degrees of customer satisfaction. Now the problem with satisfaction is that you're really just giving people what they're paying for. And it's kind of like when you see people talk about 100% satisfaction guarantee, we always say, well, as opposed to what?
Yeah.
You wouldn't be happy with 85%. So the minimum standard is giving what's called satisfaction, and that's usually driven by head driver things, by having the basic stuff right.
Yeah.
But what the real top end companies do is they focus on the heart connection, and that's only driven by people. So when your team really understand what the emotional connections are to delivering that optimal experience, and it's things like great communication, but personal communication, not just shooting emails at people all day. It's picking up the phone, it's calling in, it's whatever it may be.
Really creating a connection, that relationship.
Yeah, it's putting the human side to it. And it's making sure that helpful, friendly, understanding needs, reliable, and the big one, the heart connection is how you earn trust. When you get the trust with your market, you've really got it nailed.
Yeah, fantastic.
So the heart connection is critical.
So how do we get our teams to understand that? You know, what are some of the things that the leaders can really do to make a real difference? So obviously it's one thing to know that this is how our customer experience is driven.
Yes.
How do we actually get people to take ownership for that, step into it, drive it?
Well, as a lot of leadership will tell you, it starts at the top. So it's got to be driven from the CEO, the owner, the CEO, all the way down through the hierarchy of the business. Everybody is responsible for customer experience. And a lot of companies, when you talk to them about it, they will say, oh, the customer experience is not my department. But in actual fact, when you look at the number one companies, they effectively have number one on every job description in every role for the business is customer experience.
Yeah.
So everybody owns it. And it's got to be led from the top. And it must start first by being great for each other. So to get that optimal loyalty and that 10 out of 10 experience to the market, the leadership and management must be that for the team first.
Yeah,
If you're not internally driven by excellence, you cannot be externally accepted as excellent.
So you've seen organisations really be able to shift this equation, you know, so again, they've wanted to get far stronger engagement from their team and have been able to successfully achieve that. And what are some of the things that they were able to do to make that happen?
First of all, it's raising the bar.
Yeah.
So where companies have the best intention, but they've just got the wrong theory. So if they're working on satisfaction, you're basically saying we're going to give people what they expect.
Yes.
So if you're only giving people what they expect, you're not going beyond. So the way we look at it is you've got to understand what defines appreciation. And appreciation by nature is a heart connection. Satisfaction's a head connection, appreciation's a heart connection. So when you can get that as the focus of the team, to think about how they like to be as a consumer when they go out shopping, what do they value as a great experience, and that emotional connection that they have to the companies that they're loyal to, they get the reason why I need to be that myself.
So what I'm hearing you really say there is around empathy. Create that awareness of what
Absolutely.
is it like to live and experience what my customer does, and
Yes.
how would that help me? How would that make me feel?
Totally.
And then, yeah.
I mean,
have that
so
influence
often
on
when you
behaviour.
see an ordinary experience from somebody that doesn't really care too much, or they've got the wrong training, because you've always got to come from the fact that leadership is about taking responsibility at the top and moving it all the way down. So anywhere you have a person on the team who's not delivering the optimal experience, you've got to just look at who they are in their own world. And I don't know about you, there's not too many people I know that are really happy with bad service. We all love
normally love it.
We all love great service.
Yeah.
And so often what a lot of people forget is the fact that what they want to receive for their money is exactly the same thing that their customers want to receive from them.
Yeah.
It's really a very, very simple equation. It's just not that easy to put into place.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing loud and clear there is around accountability,
Totally.
making it actually matter, both in the way I behave as a leader, and also then what I expect from my team, and then what I make matter in terms of their reward or remedial actions that I take.
Yeah. Look, a simple mantra to this is, and this is what everybody should consider doing, is making it very clear that every single person in the business, everyone in the business, is responsible for delivering great customer experience.
That's right.
And if you start there and people get on board with that, it's contagious. You can't stop it.
Yeah.
It just creates success immediately.
And in my experience, you know, often people don't have a very clear view of why their job matters to the extent that it actually does in that customer experience.
Yes.
You know, people can feel that I'm in the engine room, I'm in the backdrop here, I'm not actually in a client-facing role, and therefore be quite naive to those flow-on consequences and impacts.
Totally.
So to that end, you know, when you think about some of the mistakes that leaders make, or the things that they avoid or don't fail to do, is what I'm trying to get at my mouth. You know, what stands out in your mind? What are the things that you think they need to do
Look,
better?
I think it's a really good question, because where a lot of it fails has the best intention, but the connection's not happening through the business. So what we always say is you must be 10 out of 10 for each other. So every part of the business, if it's a warehouse or it's a sales team or marketing or accounts or operations, whatever it is, everyone must understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So quite often people say, oh, that happens down in the warehouse, it's not my problem. But it's everybody's problem. If everyone's responsible for customer experience, then they have to take the responsibility to learn. And what management have to do and leadership have to do is to make sure that people understand the frustrations and the challenges other people have.
Yeah.
So what we do with some of our clients is we get them to move people around, and it's like a day in the life of.
Yeah.
So I know one client where they have their key people go a day in the life of the warehouse, a day in the life of being a salesperson, and they move them around the business. And then when they do that, they learn about all the challenges that each other have, and they take that back to their department, and all of a sudden the information and the knowledge is shared just by doing a simple thing of having a day in the life of the accounts department.
Yeah, and there are endless benefits to that, you know,
Totally.
that I can certainly think of immediately around just collaboration. So we talk
Exactly.
about the importance of collaboration in driving outcomes, leveraging collective potential of a team, but a lack of awareness, a lack of empathy, ignorance to what my colleagues actually do every day
Totally.
is a massive roadblock to that. So I guess to that point, you know, if we're educating people around the business as to what each of the component parts bring to the customer experience, we're entirely more likely to have shared ownership and accountability.
Exactly. Look, it really comes down to the core thing of, do people understand the challenges and understand what their colleagues are up against?
Yeah.
Because when they do, it creates the empathy. And quite often when we've had the feedback from, you know, doing a day in the life of in the business, they're like, oh my God, I had no
Yeah.
idea that's all the things you have to deal with,
Yeah.
and we're the cause of that.
Yeah.
And often
That's
it causes a lot of, you know, I'm sorry about that,
Yeah.
and now I understand, and all of a sudden the intention and the reason behind change becomes very rapid.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen this similar responses where people have suddenly realised that they, for example, are a much bigger roadblock than they ever intended to be, or they've started to understand why their colleague in the other department might be a bit heightened in their frustration when they're trying to deliver on something. So look, I absolutely can reinforce that importance of awareness and education. So again, help us to understand from your customers' experience, you know, when they have been able to really take it to a whole other level. So, you know, perhaps they've gone from 7 to 10. What's made the biggest difference, do you think?
The number one driver in business, and this is from hundreds of thousands of interviews, is really clear, accurate communication.
Yeah.
Communication is the heart of every business.
It is.
And it's pretty simple. If you just want to test it out, don't communicate with anyone for a week and see what happens. You know, it'll destroy it. So the
It'll also create a lot of rumours and a lot for HR to
you
do,
bet.
could I add?
You bet. So having from leadership first, they have to be really great and clear with their communication to their team to engage and enrol them in the reason of why we've got to be above and beyond the competition. And so I guess that the key message that our clients work with is, they work to the mantra is that different isn't always better, but better is always different.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
many companies try to be different to make themselves better, but that's
Yeah.
just a gimmick and it's a short-term
Yeah.
thing. But if you focus on being better as making that your point of difference, then it has to be down to every individual in everything that we do every day. So better is always different is a really powerful way to take a culture of a business. And the other key thing to it is obsessing over your customers, not over your competitors. So many companies spend so much time worrying about what their competitors are doing when they should be worrying about what are we doing first. Because if you get that bit right, it takes care of itself.
Yeah, great. So what I'm hearing, you know, in terms of key points from you today, Daryl, is really understand what success looks like, be really clear in your communication, lead by example and hold people accountable.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. You know, as I said at the start, you have an extraordinary amount of experience in this space. So again, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be going to a short break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by John Yo from TEDx, who'll be sharing his wisdom again on how we get those amazing customer experiences, because our people are taking ownership, engaged, and ultimately driving that experience. Welcome back to Black Belt Leader. We're excited now to be joined by John Yeo, curator, should I say, of TEDx Melbourne and CEO of Bright Star Consulting. John is a highly regarded expert in the field of communication and engaging with intent, and he's here to share his views of what it takes to create customer experience that you really need and want in your business. John, thanks for being here.
Hey Karen, thanks for inviting me.
Appreciate you taking the time. You know, TEDx or TED is clearly an iconic brand. I think there'd be very few people who aren't aware. You know, when you reflect back 10 years ago and you needed to actually launch that, you know, TEDx Melbourne customer experience, you know, what were some of the things you did to really start to establish that brand in the market?
We're acutely aware of the brand and the brand position. So as much as you would like to say it's popular today, back then the most common question was, who's TED?
Really?
So it was really about educating our market about who we are, what we stood for and what we believe in. And so when we connect at that value-based level, the conversation tends to flow a little bit better. So that's probably was the basis of our original thinking and how we sort of established ourselves, and we went from there.
Yeah, okay. So what are some of the things you actually did to, you know, express that customer experience or that offer to the world out there? You know, what are the consistent tools in the toolkit you use to create that common view of what the TEDx experience is?
Well, we were a little bit lucky that we were probably in the innovation space slightly before it was trending.
Okay.
So there was an appetite at the ground level about what we were trying to do, but a lot of organizations still hadn't got it at that point.
Yeah.
So it's really about how we help people understand who are they speaking to, what drives them, what are you currently offering, and how do you map that together?
Yeah.
And because our team was very close-knit and very passionate about what we were trying to do, there was a little bit of the enthusiasm there also helped. So I think in those early days, a bit of perspiration, a bit of enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think that's entirely true. You know, if I reflect on all of my clients who've gone through that startup phase, you know, that investment of the heart and soul of the team in really believing in the brand and what it is we're trying to create is fundamental.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I can point to lots of examples where that passion has made the biggest difference. How do you start to instill that passion in volunteers, for example? Because clearly your organisation is very dependent on not just employees, but people who want to be part of it and want to participate.
Well, we've got 50 volunteers, and so they're very creative, very resourceful, and in some respects very resourceful. And so keeping them all focused is probably our biggest challenge. Getting them to all go, we're all going in the same direction, we're all believing that, you know, we're all wanting to achieve the same thing, and this is the belief underneath that drives that. Yeah. Helping people understand the primary purpose of why we're there and what motivates them and how that achieves the overall organisational objective, I think has been our key. I don't think that really matters whether it's voluntary or not in that regard. I think that's just about human-centred design and human experience. The biggest difference, I guess, with if you've got a pay scale is you've got different ways to motivate and navigate and negotiate, which I don't have. So we have to be a bit more resourceful in terms of how we build that relationship, how we build that team, and then how we help them in terms of the passion, not only go 1,000 directions, but to stay focused. And I think that's also probably one of the keys as well.
And look, I think you've raised an incredibly important point there, because, you know, I can say to you that, you know, even environments where there's those pay reviews, the pay scales, the bonuses, etc., you know, those are very much external motivators of engagement and behaviours ultimately, or attitudes and emotions and ultimately behaviours. And, you know, we're entirely more likely to get people to step up to the challenge and be who they need to be if they actually want to. Not because there's a financial reward. So again, what's at the heart of the TEDx brand in terms of what do people usually buying into? What are they passionate about and why are they hanging out with you?
We very, very closely watch not only what I call extrinsic motivators, things you can see and touch, their social media profiles, what they do, what they're interested in, but their intrinsic motivators, what makes them proud of what they do, what do they believe in, what excites them. And we actually capture that data by actually asking very specific questions. And so that allows us to have the whole human being experience. And so we do exactly the same whether it's a partner or a volunteer or a community member, because they're ultimately still human and they're still driven at the same.
Share some of those questions with us. What are some of the things that you ask?
So, what are three? My favourite one is, what are 3 websites that represent you as a human being?
Because and what are you looking for in the answer in that?
Well, we're looking for the types of ideas that get presented, or websites that get presented, the angles by which they approach, the sentiment and position? Are they choosing stuff that's populist or trending? Or are they choosing stuff that's deeply well thought and well considered?
And a reflection of their passions and the things that they're bought into.
Because if we become very reactive to the marketing hype, especially with social media being what it is, it's very easy to get distracted and pulled the wrong direction.
And I guess it also reflects on, you know, how firmly or how strongly they feel what they do. You know, there's always a temptation in an interview scenario to tell you what you want to hear, as opposed to what I'm actually really passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned you had a couple of favourite questions. Is there another one that comes to mind?
We get a lot of really good insight from what are you most proud of as well. Where you actually get some very basic, for want of a better term, around family values, around what's important to them. You know, really core things that I think allow people to understand what rejuvenates them as a human being, and then how TED as a brand intersects with that. Because some of these people have done things like climbed Everest and broken world records, and we've got other people going, I was lucky to get by, you know, this drug addiction, or you know, I have the most amazing kids. And so these are all valid considerations and equally important in their lives, and so we need to be able to understand, I guess, the diversity in that, and then how we embrace that as part of the narrative that we create with it. Yeah, it's absolutely fabulous. I totally agree that question around depth of pride is a key one, because people are entirely unlikely to say, I'm very proud of something, unless they do actually feel deeply about that. Absolutely.
So again, I've seen lots of experiences or scenarios where that's a smart question to ask. So when you think about, you know, the link between this human part of the equation and what the customer ultimately experiences, you know, what do you think makes the biggest difference? What has the biggest impact?
Kind of what Daryl said, the small details done well. You know, really small things that kind of make people feel like we've thought about them, we've considered them.
So it's that personalisation of the experience. I actually feel cared for as an individual customer.
And then how do you do that at scale? I mean, our events have got 3,000 people at them now. So it's like, how do you still maintain that intimacy, knowing that you're going to be part of this big crowd that just kind of comes in and comes out? And as you pointed out, you know, again, what really matters in that scenario is the ownership that every single team member takes. Absolutely.
So we're actually in that event, we're on the floor. What are those connections that I am creating with each customer?
We can't afford to not have an engaged volunteer. The way they manage the random elements and the character and quality that they have in doing that says just as much about the brand as the technical competence of, I don't know, checking a ticket or registering someone.
That's right. So what I've heard both you and Daryl talk about, you know, extensively today is, whilst we can give people instruction, we can give them a view of what success looks like, we really need to inspire their buy into that. We actually need to get them to want to be amazing at impacting that customer experience. That, you know, taking a compliant approach is never going to be
box ticking
enough.
Is never going to suit a market that's changing as rapidly as ours, and everyone's market is changing rapidly. So the question is, if you're hell-bent on just box ticking, you're arguably just doing what everyone's expecting to be done. As Daryl said, you're inevitably going to head to into the rocks at that point.
Exactly. So, you know, again, if you reflect on a great success story that you've seen, whether it's within your own business, I know obviously through Bright Stars you do a lot of advisory work around communicating with impact, and you know, we've heard already on the show that communication is at the heart of the ability to engage and inspire human beings. You know, what's your number one piece of advice for people around being a great communicator with your people?
For me, great communication is really around one simple thing. It's about empowering people to achieve their full potential, but also encouraging them to do the same for others. And so it's about how do you instill that capability within that person that then becomes, I guess, the seed of other possibilities. And if you can instill that in someone about what you do and what you believe and what you can do and what you can create together, then that automatically has this expansive nature about it that allows it to expand within that individual, but also within the people that they engage with. And so communication is the ability to effectively do that in short periods of time. You know, when they're distracted and they might have 1,000 other things going on. How do you humanly connect?
Yeah.
And then that becomes the impetus for real communication.
Yeah. So with the coaching clients that you work with, you know, what's one of the biggest communication barriers that you observe? What are some of the things that hold them back from having the impact they need to have?
I think, no question about it, the ability to be open-minded.
Okay.
No question about it at all. If they're not willing to learn and grow in a world that's changing, they're already dead in the water. The other one is really around, and it's a bit more mechanical, most people have at least 50 to 100% too much content to say.
Okay.
And so they're trying to jam knowledge across rather than help people understand wisdom or insight.
Yeah.
People don't want knowledge, you can Google knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
But wisdom inside is unique to that individual.
Yeah.
And that's where the value and the relationship's created.
So it's the actual application rather than just the theory. So don't do a speech. Help people to really understand why this matters.
No one wants to be talked at.
Yeah.
No one wants to be talked at. People want to have human relationships and interactive conversations.
Yeah, fantastic. John, I'm very grateful to you being here. How can our viewers find out more about you and what your team do?
Well, my website's down at the moment, so probably LinkedIn's the best place to start.
Great.
And then I'll fix that in the new year.
Okay, we'll see a fabulous new website then. So thanks very much to John for joining us today. You know, we've been very excited to have you here to share those insights. You know, as we've been talking about, that link between our customer and our employees is such a strong one. You know, to make sure that we are getting people's hearts and minds involved in the game, and that they turn up today, you know, every day at work wanting to have a positive impact on our customer experience. So very grateful to both John and Daryl for sharing their views on how we can start to influence that as leaders. So next time on Black Belt Leader, we'll be looking at how to re-engage a checked out team. So if you're looking for ways to get more than a compliant contribution, which is what people do when they really have to do something, you know, if you really want them to dig deep and give you their all when they're really not inclined to do so, join us on that show. Again, as I said earlier in the program, if there are topics you would like us to explore, please get in touch via our website, that's corporatedojo.com, or via our social media channels. So thanks for joining us, and remember, you choose. Will you be an ordinary or an awesome leader of people?